I'm Phil Yeske, Science and Alliance Officer at UMDF, back with you with the third in our series about the Clinical Research Pavilion. As you perhaps have seen from the previous videos, we're adding a new component to this year's Mitochondrial Medicine Symposium, and we're really excited about the opportunity to collect clinical research data. If you haven't had a chance to see the previous videos, I encourage you to track them down on social media, come to the UMDF website, where we talk about the pavilion, why it's important, the types of data that we're looking to collect. And then we've had conversations already with Dr. Zarzwela Zolkifli-Cunningham at CHOP about her study, and Mindy Leffler from Casimir Trials. And now today we're going to wrap up the series with a conversation with Dr. Peter McGuire from the NIH, who's going to talk about the viral exposures in children with mitochondrial disease study. So if Dr. McGuire can join me.
Hi, Phil. How are you?
Hi, Peter. Yeah, great to see you. Really appreciate your being here.
Thanks.
And I think for our patient community, this is a really nice opportunity to learn a little bit about the study and how they might be able to participate in clinical research related to your interests. So why don't we start with just telling us a little bit about the study itself?
Sure. So this study actually is a continuation of a study we've actually had running in the past, and we ran during COVID to look at viral exposures in children with mitochondrial disease.
Right.
And so the reason we began to ask this question is my group is very interested in what's called host pathogen interactions in children with mitochondrial disease. In other words, how does having a virus and mitochondrial disease, when they happen to come together in the same person, how does that affect their disease? How does it affect their disease outcome, their disease progression? Because anecdotally, as we've known for many years, you hear all these stories about patients having their disease progress and symptomatology getting worse with viral infections. So to begin to answer these questions, it's good to know, or a very important point is to know what viruses, first of all, are they being infected with. And so what we did during COVID is we basically sent these kits out, which we will have at the pavilion, which are little blood sampling kits that you can actually do from your finger, much like a diabetic would test their blood sugar, essentially. And it gets taken up into this little Q-tip sized collection device. And then those can actually be either left with us at the table if participants happen to do it that day, or they can send it back to us. And then what we do with that is we can then extract antibodies from that and look and see what the individual has been exposed to, or what types of viruses they have been exposed to, because those antibody fingerprints are essentially almost like a forensic investigation, right? You see on those crime shows. We're trying to basically pin down something that happened in the past to see what people have been exposed to. And one of the other main reasons we're asking this question is we have the hypothesis that not every viral infection results in kids getting sick and having decline in their clinical status, that it actually may be select viruses, certain viruses which may be actually more detrimental than others.
Yeah, really interesting study, and in many ways, very complementary, right, to some of the other studies that we'll have going on in the Clinical Research Pavilion. Both the motor skills assessment and the digital video assessments will be, I believe, 16 years old and older, whereas this is very much a pediatric focus. So
it is.
This is a great opportunity.
Yeah, so sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. So our age groups essentially will be, it's a pediatric age group. Under the age of 18, in individuals with mitochondrial disease who have a genetic diagnosis. That's the way our protocol was written. So those are entry requirements. There is a consent process that is part of it. The consent itself probably takes about 10 to 15 minutes because we just want to make sure that, the caregivers and individuals understand essentially what they're participating in and the protections that they will receive as a result of the signing the consent form, essentially. And also, there's a discussion about what we actually do with the results and et cetera. So, and then also families receive feedback in terms of, some of the data we actually find on a personal level. So a lot of families find that interesting, that,
For sure.
and,
Yeah.
and this would be a first collection in a series of collections. So, you have to measure antibodies across time to see how those changes occur, to make not predictions, but assessments on what they've been exposed to.
Yeah, but at least minimally invasive, a very small
Minimally invasive.
amount, just
Yes,
a drop of blood. Right.
exactly.
Yeah, so that's great. We've touched upon the importance of informed consent and the role of informed consent in clinical research in some of the other videos. And I think it's worth repeating, right, for our patient audience, that this is clinical research. And to participate in research from an ethics point of view, it's really important that you understand what you are agreeing to participate in. And so informed consent will play a role in any of these studies. And it's a really good way to educate yourself on what it's like to participate in a clinical trial when a drug is involved. None of these studies involve drugs, but this is important clinical research that will help us to have better clinical trials. And that's the major goal of the Clinical Research Pavilion. So, Peter, I believe you or a colleague will be able to staff Wednesday through Saturday
Yes.
at the symposium while the Clinical Research Pavilion is open. And just want to mention, we list healthy controls down there for some of the other studies. That does not apply in this study's case, right? We are looking for pediatric patients, caregivers of pediatric patients to participate in this study.
Yeah, it's actually limited to just pediatric patients. So
Right.
yes, and then individuals have essentially three options to participate. They could actually take the kit and at the meeting actually collect
Right.
at the meeting and just give it back to us. They could take it home and think about it if they want, and then they can send it to us. We'll provide mailing materials for that. And then the third thing is there will be a list that people can sign up for, that they're permitting us to contact them in the future and send kits to their home, essentially.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, that kind of flexibility, I think, speaks a lot to the design of the study, but also really helps our patient community. Peter, thank you for joining us today and talking about this. I hope some of you out here who are caregivers of pediatric patients with mitochondrial disease, again, a confirmed genetic diagnosis will be required to participate in this study, just like the other studies. So we've learned a little bit about your goals with it, and we'll look forward to seeing you in Charlotte.
Look forward to seeing you, Phil, as well as all of our patients and families. We haven't seen them in a while, and it'll be really good for everyone to get together and see each other.
I think we all feel that way. Thanks, Peter.
Great, thanks.
So much like with the other videos, I just want to wrap up by explaining the overall process. All participants in the Clinical Research Pavilion will need to join the UMDF patient populated registry called Mitoshare. That is a clinical research database. It will be the place where we can interact with you before participating in any studies, and importantly, maintain contact with you when you participate in studies so that we can understand your experience in participating, but also how to make it better in future symposia. So that's very important to us. So you can get started joining Mitoshare right now. There's actually an eligibility survey inside of it. Sign up shouldn't take you more than 10 or 15 minutes. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to registry@umdf.org. My colleague, Nicole Wilson, our registry coordinator, will be happy to talk you through any aspect of the registry. But also importantly, I want to share, we do have additional information about the Clinical Research Pavilion on our symposium page, and you will find that at the umdf.org/symposium. You'll see an area talking about the Clinical Research Pavilion. If you click on that, there's an interest form that you can fill out with some of your contact details, and that will help to us then to make contact with you to provide additional details about the sign-up process and getting time slots, etc. So this concludes our series on the Clinical Research Pavilion. I hope you've learned something about our overall goals in terms of improving clinical trial readiness for mitochondrial disease. This is really paramount to UMDF, that as we move into this clinical era, we have to find ways to engage the patient community, help educate you about the clinical trial process, and ultimately move this towards the treatments and cures that we all want. Thanks for watching, and look forward to seeing as many of you as possible in Charlotte.